live. Joining me today, a very special guest. I'm very excited to have this conversation. Arnold, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for those who might not know you?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit. I'm an American who came in 1974 to teach philosophy at University College London.
Mm.
I was very lucky and happy to find that position. It's a wonderful department. And then I retired in 2011
Mm.
and spent all my time there. Uh, from a pretty early age, I was thinking about philosophy. And the sort of core of the thing I'm proudest of, that came along when I was about 15 years old.
Mm.
And I've been developing that ever since.
Interesting. So the universalism, which we're going to talk a lot about in this discussion, that's what you're referring to?
That's right.
And you had that insight when you were 15 years old?
I had well, probably also an important insight about a year earlier. But yeah, when I was 15, this thought experiment hit me.
Mm-hmm.
And that started me loosening the conditions of personal identity in a pretty radical way already,
Mm-hmm.
but not as complete a loosening as finally occurred in 1983.
I see. So this is what you talk about in your book, which is coming out, which I want to mention here in a second.
Yeah,
You mentioned you and your friend were talking about this thought experiment about brain duplications. Is that the thing you're mentioning?
that's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he'd read a strange newspaper article. I've never heard any more about this thing, about Russian scientists exchanging the brains of dogs,
Yeah.
from one head to another. And somehow that hit me pretty, powerfully. And I thought of duplicate brains where quarters were being exchanged,
Mm-hmm.
say at two ends of a table, and how you wouldn't think someone went over with one quarter in the exchange, and you'd think that person was wholly there, where he started, but then that means another quarter exchange begins, in the same way with him, wholly there,
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't go over with the second quarter then,
Mm-hmm.
nor the third, nor the fourth. Yet the the result of all the original stuff being on the other end of the table would be just like that if you'd simply lifted them and exchanged places. And then you'd swear he had gone across to the other end of the table.
Right.
So this made me think about how subjective experience can be distinguished from the objective conditions of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the direction it pointed me in. The thing a year earlier was a thought about objective ordering in time. If you could somehow, freeze segments of some event happening to someone
Mm-hmm.
and rearrange them objectively, they'd still be experienced as coming in the same order.
Right. Similar to Permutation City. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, no. No, I don't know about this.
The science fiction author, Greg Egan, I think, or I actually forget his name. I think it's Egan. But he's written about sort of these similar situations where you live your life backwards and ask the question like, would you even notice? His
Yeah,
kind of answer is no. And if you took the different parts of your experience and rearranged
yeah,
them, that one would always kind of lead to the next, no matter how they were arranged.
yeah. No, I never worked. I mixed them up
Oh,
pretty well.
you froze for a second. You never what?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just played each thing through objectively in a different order. In the book, I talk about a magic film,
Hmm.
that captures the experience of someone, and then you start splicing it and so on. What's it
And,
going to feel like?
and so the basic idea is that subjectively, as you move through each experience, you couldn't tell that they were out of order because if
That's right.
you're intending to, eat the sandwich, then subjectively, the next thing that happens is you eating the sandwich, whether or not a bunch of stuff was in
That's right.
between.
That's
Hmm.
right. I mean, the simplest is where you simply stop the thing in the middle.
Right,
You wait a billion years and start it up again. There's no gap in the experience.
right.
There's no way it could register that there's any objective time between
Exactly.
before the gap and after.
Okay, so I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but that's
Yeah,
okay. It's interesting because there's a lot that we agree on, and yet we disagree about the ultimate conclusion of what we should draw from these. So I think that's what's interesting about our particular views on this occasion.
yeah,
So I wonder if we could just start by saying what universalism is, how you think of it, and then we'll start talking about the arguments for it, the thought experiments, and so forth. But first, just what is it that you
yeah.
think all this points towards?
Okay. I mean, one way of introducing it that I use in the book a couple of times is to ask this question. First I point out that there are loads of conscious things in the world.
Hmm.
They're distinct from each other. I don't think any weird. Oh, sorry. Somebody's actually phoning me on FaceTime. I haven't had this happen in years.
Okay.
Okay, what do? I don't even know how to stop it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't either. Hey,
So sorry.
they can join the conversation. They must have a good objection.
I really genuinely don't know what to do. Okay, okay. Now, getting back to this point I was making. Yeah, I don't think anything funny about these distinct conscious things. They're distinct.
Okay.
They're developing their experiences quite independently of each other, as far as I'm concerned. Um, and then I asked the question, which is, how do you know which of those conscious things you are?
Hmm.
What is it that tips you off to that? And I point out that it's not some kind of list of objective facts about you that you're checking off. I must be the one who was born in such and such year and place. Before you can ever get to that, you already just simply know that you are the one, in quotes, you are the one with immediate first person experience. Right? That's the one you are. Where the pains really hurt, and,
Hmm.
where the lines of vision are leading in from all around, sort of subjectively central to the world, so on. That's the one that's you, the one in quotes that's you. But then you can pretty quickly add to that so I'm still thinking about this
Phone
phone
call.
call.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so we'll just relax and I'll try to get this out. Yeah. So then you can have another thought, which is that, well, all experiences had like that. There's nothing special about the one that you're considering to be yours. So have you succeeded in explaining how you distinguish which one is yours? And then what I invite you to do is reverse your usual thinking about this. Your usual thinking is that you are some objectively defined thing, where you would have this list of facts to check off. And if that thing, because you are that thing, if it has a hat, the hat belongs to you. If it has an experience, like the experience you're having right now, that belongs to you because you are that thing. And the experience belongs to that thing. The reversal of this usual thinking is to consider that perhaps this quality of the experience that you had to use in discovering which one you were, perhaps it's that in itself that makes the thing with that experience be you, whatever the hell its objective nature may be. If that stays the same, that there's this immediacy of experience with the self-interest of the pains that actually being the ones that hurt and so on, if that stays the same, you could fiddle around all kinds of thought experiment ways, with the thing that's having the experience, and it would just remain you through all of it. That's the reversal.
Okay.
Right? So one way I have of expressing is talking about, tails wagging dogs instead of the dogs wagging tails. So, and that's the way I think of this. I think in our ordinary way of understanding what we are, it's as I just described it. The experience belongs to me because of my unique objective definition. But what's true is that whatever the hell has an experience with that quality that enables me to identify what I am, that's me, whatever is true of it objectively. So it's a subjective condition. No, nothing mystical, nothing weird, something all of us recognize perhaps better than anything else. Right? It's that subjective condition.
Okay.
That is what's necessary to something being me.
So put it.
Just add one quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. It's that if this were true, then why would it be that my would be cut off from other experiences I'm supposed to be having? Right? If I've got everything with the immediate first person experience, if that's what I am. And the answer is very simple. Experience is developed in these distinct experiencing things that I talked about earlier. And they're distinct from each other and cut off from each other. There are no nerves strung out between them. If there were, we'd see beyond this, right? But as it happens, there aren't. So it feels as though this is the only one that I am in each and every case. It would feel that way. It's entirely predictable within universalism that it would feel exactly the way it does feel. So that's what I wanted to add.
Okay. So one way to sum up kind of what you're saying here is that according to universalism, what I am is simply the thing which can immediately access experiences. And since that's something that's common between your experience and my experience, that somehow that I am you and you are me, or that there's right. Kind of the sameness there. That's the view.
Right. Yeah. And I'll just point to brain bisection for a moment. In brain bisection, there can arise cut off experiences within one brain, where either one, if there'd been a stroke instead that wiped out the other hemisphere, either one would be mine. Each one feels as though as though there couldn't be another experience that's mine at this time,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And that's objective time interfering illegitimately in our thinking about subjective experience.
So can I just try to get,
Yeah,
so first of all, I just kind of want to clarify what the view is. Um, and as a parentheses, I want to ask you about the book and if the book is scheduled to be published and what its name is so people that are listening could know that.
yeah.
So
Okay, so what would you like me to do first?
can you mention the book's title and if it's being published?
Yeah, it's called Finding Myself, subtitle, Beyond the False Boundaries of Personal Identity.
Mhm.
So that's what it's called.
Interesting.
And what else would you like to know about
Well, I
it?
was just wondering when it would be, if it's being published, and if so, when, so we could.
It is being, I know it's being published, thank God, but I don't know just when.
Okay.
It looked as though it could have been published by now, the way the publisher set out with this thing. But there are other things the publisher has to do, and I think they're running a bit behind.
Okay.
Um,
Cool. I just want to make sure that I'm able to post a link to it and let people know that they should read it. Because
yeah,
I read the draft of it. It's a great book. You're a great writer.
thank you very
So,
much.
okay, now back to the actual view. I want to try to distinguish your idea from like other kinds of ideas that maybe are in the vicinity.
Very
So
good.
the view that there's only one self, that
Mhm.
somehow there's a universal mind, that's not your view.
That's not my view. No.
Uh-huh. So how would you
Um,
distinguish your view from that kind of view?
yes. The tail wagging thing is what will show you that.
Okay.
That what determines that something is me is completely in the character of the experience. That is first person and immediate. Right.
Hmm.
If you were a Humean, a very strict sort of Humean, as Hume sometimes is, about
Up until
substances.
certain appendixes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, if you were very strict about that, you would be thinking that perceptions, as he called them, the content of the mind, uh, which have this immediacy I'm talking about,
Hmm.
that they did not belong to something other than perceptions, because you can't have an idea of anything other than perceptions.
Right.
Ideas are just copies of perceptions. So, what is the world and what is your mind? It's a bundle of perceptions, as he famously says.
Right.
Um, so there isn't a thing in that metaphysics to possess the perceptions, but the perceptions are still mine because of the immediacy that I'm talking about. The self-interest is still there, in eliminating the painful ones, because it's mine, right? That's enough for there to be me. I don't need anything else. Now, this one thing that someone might be proposing as the only thing that possesses all experience. First of all, it seems to me incoherent. I don't know what kind of thing could be shoving itself into all these distinct things and having the experience on it. But I'm not that interested in arguing against it on that basis. I'm not interested in anything when I'm arguing for universalism other than this simple proposition that all that's involved in experiencing being mine is immediacy of experience,
Hmm.
right? You can hold any kind of metaphysical views you like. You can think there's only one thing having all this stuff, but that wouldn't be what was making all of it mine,
Mm.
and that wouldn't be what was giving all of it the self-interest and so on.
Okay.
That's in the quality of the experience itself, and if it's not there, I'm not around. that I am purely the haver of such experience. Now, I could be around while I'm unconscious, but it's only me because when the consciousness started it again, it would have that character to it.
So is it correct to say, on your view, there's only one self, or is that incorrect?
Okay. Yeah, that could be a way of expressing it
Okay.
if what's being expressed by it is the thing that I already explained.
Right.
It could also be a way of expressing this alternative kind of view that you were just talking about,
Mhm.
right? Some kind of mystical view, I guess,
Yeah.
or just one thing that's there in all the experience. As we'll see later, because I'm quite sure we'll come around to talking about probability argument for
Yeah.
my that's even more of a probability risk than the usual view of what a person is. Because you'd
Okay.
have to be just that one. You
Yeah.
wouldn't
So
even have
I
plurality.
I guess I had in mind there's a kind of version of idealism that's semi-popular
Yeah.
nowadays where like reality is just a mind and we are somehow disassociated like alter egos of this one mind. But that's
Okay.
not your that's not what I'm just trying to distinguish like your view from
Yeah,
that
no,
point of
this is
view.
great. This is great. This is really essential to do.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I'm not an idealist. I think it's a mistake, right? But as a universalist, I'm not at all concerned about that.
Okay.
If idealism is the truth about the world, then then it being me, what this mind is purely on account of the experience, the immediacy of the experience, that subjective character of the experience. Um, it has nothing to do with the idealism.
Right. Good. Okay. And then, so I'm just trying to clarify at this point for myself and for our listeners. But now, when I think about personal identity and the debate over it in philosophy, what I tend to think of is the question, what makes me the same person through time? So, am I the same person as I was when I was five? And if so, what accounts for that? Is universalism supposed to be an answer to that traditional question, or is it not interested in that question?
No, it will. It's not as interested in that question.
Okay.
But it will answer that question in a very surprising way. And it is asking a question more basic than that. It's not asking what makes me continue on as me. And you get these classic positions on it, that it's because it's the same thing, or it's the same process of thought being continued. Those are the two main, popular positions on it.
Yeah.
It's not like those, as you just pointed out, basing themselves on this question of what makes it continue. What made it me in the first place?
Hmm.
Continuing on. I mean, this is perhaps especially embarrassing for the mental continuity people,
Uh-oh.
because yeah, that's what's supposed to continue me on. That this process, mental process, is developing in some kind of causal line, or uh, but was it not me at the beginning of it? Uh, so what was it at the beginning? There's no continuity to make it me, right? Why are you concentrating on that?
Yeah.
Um, and I've got the answer. That my very first experience in the womb probably had immediacy in it. If it didn't, then it wasn't mine. If there is any experience in the world that doesn't have that quality, it's not mine.
Okay.
So I'm not making a claim that all experience has that quality, although I think it's anything worth calling experience, and it probably, will have that quality while
Okay.
it's happening. So, yeah, so if in the womb, you got those first stirrings of consciousness have that immediacy, then they're mine. And whether they're continued or not as a process, as a mental process, is actually irrelevant.
Okay. So you could take universalist views and combine them with any of the traditional kind of answers to the question of identity over time, basically.
Yeah, that's right. But of course, I'd be saying, why are you so, you know, worked up about identity over time?
Yeah.
It's
You don't think that's the main issue in personal identity?
no. I mean, if you can settle what made it you to begin with, then it's probably that that's making it you, with
Mhm.
this continuation of the mental process or whatever it is you think it is,
Okay.
or with the continuation of the identity of the thing having a mental process, where the mental process could disappear, as in amnesia, or
Right.
they that that's not what's really involved in it being you at all.
Okay. So I think we have a pretty good understanding of what you're trying to argue for, which is that,
Yeah,
as you put it, that an experience, what makes an experience mine is just having immediate access to it. So that's where I am, wherever there's experience with immediacy. That's great. Now, we're going to get to the argument. I know that's a big part of it, but I want
yeah,
to flesh out the view a little bit as on the other side, because you do say some
yes,
things that if this view were true, that it would have some implications that I guess I found somewhat surprising, um, given my understanding of the view. So one of the things you say is that, like, if this were true, then we would have some reason to treat other people, in certain ways that, we might not want to cause pain to someone else because that's me experiencing the pain,
yeah,
over there. Okay. And so I'm wondering what you're going to say about, so if your view is true, then I am equally the serial killer as I am the pacifist. And so isn't part of my
yeah,
nature then, enjoying causing pain? So why would it follow that we ought to, um, treat people with kindness and abstain from causing the pain instead of endorsing
right,
our serial
yeah,
killer
yeah,
natures or whatever in that way. And I don't mean this as an objection. I just want to understand
yeah.
why
I know.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's not an objection, because if this is the truth about what personal identity involves, uh, and it turns out that it's something horrific, um, or not helpful, or then tough luck. That's
Mhm.
it. I
So
mean,
be it.
I went through a period of being Buddhistic,
Mm,
not following Buddhism,
right.
but I had a kind of middle period in my thinking about this, where I thought that a subject of experience is only momentary,
Mm,
right? And that's as I said at the time, it's a really bleak view. There's nothing, very nice about holding it. I held it because that's where the logic seemed to be driving me.
mm,
Then I saw I was being fooled by the same, illusion that I described earlier, um, into thinking that. And
right.
furthermore, a probability argument I'd been developing, what I was turned naturally on that view too. So that view got eliminated, got blown out of the water by the logic.
Mm,
Now, what I ended up with, and what I feel very confident about, is universalism. It's where everything was really wanting to go.
mhm.
Uh, and I didn't become that till 1983,
So,
for me.
so what I'm hearing you say is that if it turns out that, on this view, that we shouldn't, that has these counter implications that we shouldn't treat people in
Yeah,
certain ways, then that's just the nature of reality. That's how it is.
yes,
But still, you seem to think that accepting this view should tend to lead people towards having compassion,
I
or
do.
so
Yeah.
I'm asking why think that?
But I do think that people can take this. I mean, people being me, of course, can take this in ways that would frustrate what I'm hoping
Mm,
will happen. What seems natural to me, what I'm hoping for, is that there will at least be some kind of shove in the, if people just imagine people start thinking, Zuboff's got this probability argument, seems to settle it, and it explains physics, because I think it's the only way you can explain the nature of the physical world. We've This is true, that it's me. These are all versions of me that I'm dealing with, and I am there behind the eyes of all of them. It's my experience as much as, something that's obviously closely connected to what's happening to me now. I
mm,
mean, even on the ordinary view, most of my experience is disconnected from most of the rest of my experience.
right.
Right. But it's mine. Why is it mine? I think it's because when we imagine it or remember it, it's got this first person character. It's from the inside.
Mm,
The pains hurt and so on. Um,
okay.
and and it's just the case that that's true all over. That wherever there is this first person character of experience, I'm there, and the pains are mine,
Mm,
and the joys are mine. And I think the tendency will be to think very differently about oneself, about groups, instead of just being interested in a group that is yours, since they're all yours equally. And I think, and also, of course, very important to me is the fear of death as annihilation
mm.
will also be banished by this.
Hmm. That was going to be my last follow-up, my clarificatory question is what
Yeah,
implications for life after death, if any, there might be, and if you are familiar with other views that have taken this kind of not universalism, but taken the idea that what comes after death is just other experience associated with like the philosopher Tom Clark. I don't know if you know him or not, but anyway, so is
yeah,
it your view then that like what? So if I die, what I would colloquially refer to as myself, that it's not really the death of myself because there's plenty of other
yeah,
experiencers. Even if, like you put in the book, a million years goes by before the next conscious experience, there you are
yeah,
again.
yeah.
Now, is that supposed to be comforting to me, or is that
It's comforting in one way.
uh,
I mean, I don't think universalism is in every way a comforting view
okay?
by any means, because you have all the pains. It's a horrible view in some respects.
Mm,
But one thing it does away with, for me certainly, is this paradoxical thought about death, which particularly terrifies a lot of people. Um, the thought that, okay, the moment after I've had my last experience, what am I? Nothing? How should I view that? Eternally nothing. Um, and what I'm saying is, by no means are you nothing. I mean, you are the experiencer in all experience, and you remain that. It's a necessary truth, and you're eternally that. Um, and all the experience, now the experience will happen in different places, different times, and it'll all be equally yours. You'll be in it. There won't, I mean, what people naturally look for when they begin learning about what I'm saying about death is, okay, but which one's going to be next?
hmm.
But that's a mistake. Uh, um, they're all experienced as next moments. right?
Uh-huh.
But you'll be in that. You can't turn into nothing. Nothing isn't what you are.
Mm. So what last kind of clarificatory question
Yeah.
in this is included non-human experiences?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not concerned within the view universalism to draw the boundary
Okay.
of where consciousness, is ends. But wherever it is, if it's first person in character, it's mine. And I could, if an oyster just has a dull ache, but it's got that character, it's
Hmm.
mine.
Interesting. So if you were a panpsychist, which I'm not saying you are, but if you were and you
No,
thought that there was like a little bit of consciousness everywhere, then you would, on a universalist view,
it
you
would
would
be
be
yours.
everywhere. Yeah. Uh-huh.
If it's got this immediate first person character,
Hmm.
and I don't know what a consciousness would be without that, really, then yeah, um, that would be yours.
And by first person character, we mean kind of phenomenal consciousness, the niggle what it's like stuff, or did you mean something
Yeah,
else?
that there's something that it's like,
Okay.
is one way of saying
Good. Okay, so I think I've got a good handle on what it is that you're trying to argue for.
it. Yeah,
Um, and now I think we should get into the argument for it, this probabilistic argument. So you've already kind of started us down the pathway talking about the bisection of the brains. So can we go step by step how you developed the argument, the probabilistic one?
oh, do you want to know a bit about the history of it? Or
Whichever way you want to introduce it. Yeah, however you think is best to go
yeah,
through
I
with
don't
it.
know if that's the best. I think, well, I want to get into history because I think it's kind of interesting and maybe somewhat illuminating.
Okay.
But I think it'd be confusing, and we wouldn't know what it was the history of if
Yeah,
I didn't first just state it in some very simple fashion.
great.
Um, so I mean, okay, let me bring up this as a possibility of how to carry on. Uh, I have Zoomed with you once before,
Hmm.
which I enjoyed very much, and I did a lot of reading during that. And my reason for doing that was because, yeah, I can explain things as you've been hearing, but I worked a lot on the wording in what I've written.
Hmm.
So it seems like a waste not to make use of that.
Okay.
So what I could do is the book, um, the first thing that comes after contents in the book is a very short section called a brief proof that you are every conscious thing. So there's a lot more to come later in getting clearer about what's going on in it. But I think it already packs a punch, and it would be a good starting point for us.
Okay.
Uh, so I've got my iPad here, and okay. So I'll read this out as a basis for our discussion about it. Yeah, brief proof that you're every conscious thing. And I've got Know Thyself, Oracle of Delphi. Imagine that you wake up and learn that this awakening was the result of one of two alternative awakening games having been played. In the hard game, you would have been awakened only if a fair coin that was flipped 1,000 times happened to have matched precisely in its pattern of heads and tails a list of 1,000 words, each being either heads or tails, that had been assigned to you as a kind of security code. If even one coin flip had not corresponded to your list, you would have stayed sleeping forever. In the alternative easy game, although the same coin was flipped, there was no list assigned to you, and you were simply sure to be awakened without the coin's pattern of heads and tails mattering at all. You must infer that it is enormously more probable that your awakening had not depended on the absurdly improbable matching that was required by the hard game. In the area of thinking about personal identity, there's also a hard game and an easy game. The hard game, the usual view of personal identity, requires for your existence that in your begetting, in the begetting of each of your ancestors, just the one sperm cell crucial for your eventual emergence, out of something like 200 million sperm cells competing in each begetting, was the one that got to the egg first each and every time. If in even one of those numberless begettings, a different sperm cell had made it first to the egg, you would have been excluded forever from existing in the usual view. The only easy game regarding personal identity is the view I call universalism, in which you would have existed no matter which sperm cells hit which eggs, for the sole reason that an experience being yours only ever requires that the style of the experience be first person, like the style of the experience that you know to be yours right now. So, since all consciousness is first person in style, all consciousness is equally yours. But in each conscious thing, it naturally misleadingly feels as though only this one thing's experience is yours, as though the cut-off experience of the other conscious things is not also yours. Mm-hmm. Then in parentheses, universalism says it feels like this merely because the experience in each conscious thing is cut off from the others. But the ordinary view adds to this already sufficient explanation of feeling cut off from the others, the unneeded, unthinking, and unwarranted assertion that you also only are one conscious thing. A thing that to exist would have to have won a series of sperm cell lotteries. And in your reasoning regarding personal identity, you must apply this exact same logic as you would in the earlier imaginary awakening game. It is enormously more probable that your existence, your awakening to consciousness, had not depended on an absurdly improbable matching of actual winning sperm cells to the sperm cells that were required for you to emerge in a game as hard as the usual view of personal identity. Note that the existence of winners in the usual view of personal identity makes it not one jot more probable that you were such a winner. The only view that can automatically place you among the unbelievably rare actual products of the sperm cell lotteries is universalism. In the usual view, you would virtually certainly have been left behind with all the potential persons that never made it into existence. Let's express this in terms of numbers. The number of atoms in the visible universe has about 80 digits. The chance of a fair coin matching a list of 1,000 heads and tails would be 1 in a number that has 301 digits. This improbability is already reached in considering just 37 human begettings having each produced the right ancestor for your eventual existence. And then there are all the other begettings, human and earlier, that were required to turn out just right if you were to have emerged according to the usual view of personal identity. In other words, forget it. So if universalism weren't true, you can bet you wouldn't be here. Just as coming into existence is easy, staying in existence is easy. You exist as all conscious things. Therefore, the death of one does not annihilate you. The implications of universalism are very big. And that's this first section.
Okay. So I guess I have just a couple preliminary questions. The first is, since this is a probabilistic kind of argument, and I agree that intuitively it does seem like the easy game is the thing that you should conclude, at least in the coin flip case. The question that I have is whether you take this to be an argument, and I know there's a lot going on in the book about probability, so we're obviously that you have something to say here, but I'm a little bit confused about whether you think that this is an argument that this view is true or that I should believe that it's true. And to me, those are different conclusions. So I'm wondering which one you take to be the appropriate conclusion.
Okay. Most of what I think is, no, I won't say most. A hell of a lot of what I think is true, I think is true on the basis of probability. And that's something I do explain just a bit later in the book.
Right.
So, yeah, I think. So, what was your distinction again?
Well, that this should give me that it's a rational thing to conclude, that it's reasonable to conclude, or that I should think it really is the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should think, just as you would think if I don't know, if a coin was flipped 1,000 times, landed heads every time, and there was only a fair coin or a double-headed coin, you should think, yeah, it was a double-headed coin.
Right. You should think that, but it still could have been the fair coin.
Yes, it could. It's not like a logical contradiction. But it is a logical contradiction that it'd be at all probable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, because you do state in the book that it's kind of like an a priori thing, that the improbable is improbable and that the probable is probable.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not as confident as you are about that. It does seem to make an assumption about the distribution of things that you would get in kind of fair coin cases and stuff like that.
I don't think so. But I think what we're judging, we're not talking. Some people make a mistake. They think the probability is based on observation or something like that. Mm-hmm. No, we're always comparing hypotheses that are stipulated one way or another with each other as possible explanations for things we have experienced.
Right.
So the fair coin hypothesis is fixed a priori in that it's improbable that the coin is going to land heads 1,000 consecutive times. It couldn't be what we're thinking of as a fair coin if that were the case. It's a contradiction.
But why, but why, given that each coin flip is just 50-50? So each coin flip is the probability of heads. So they can't all depend on each other in the way you're suggesting, according to.
No, they don't. No.
Well, that it would be improbable that you would get.
I'm not saying they depend on each other at all.
Okay.
I'm just saying when you have consecutive flips of a fair coin like that,
right?
In each case, it's just 50-50 whether it lands heads or not, right?
Right.
But it landing that one specific way, although it is a fair coin, evenly weighted, each and every time, where it's only 50% probable in any one of those times that it will land that way, it's landing in all those cases heads. That is immensely improbable. You have to multiply a half times a half 1,000 times, right? So you only have a chance that's 1 over 2 to the 1,000th power, right? That was it 301 digits in the number,
right?
So and that's just, if that's not true, what the hell is probability?
Yeah, I guess I would go with the second thing. The what the hell is probability part?
You
But okay, so I don't want
agree?
to get caught up on this because I do think that
Okay.
it's intuitively like it makes sense what you're saying, but I just am still not clear about whether your argument is for universalism being true or merely it being improbably true that it's false.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so that seems like a different conclusion.
I think both things,
Okay.
because again, I think there is a chance that it was the fair coin instead of the double-headed coin with 1,000 consecutive heads.
Hmm.
Okay, right. But that doesn't scare me into thinking it's not true that it's double-headed. I learn it's true by way of the immense improbability of it being otherwise.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's how we learn most things, right? So that's not how I learned 2 and 3 is 5. I learned 2 and 3 is 5 by seeing it be a contradiction otherwise.
Right.
But in a case like this, it's just as convincing to me, that it actually was a double-headed coin rather than a fair coin. That's at least as convincing for me, is that 2 and 3 is 5.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean, but still, if you went over there and weighed in and found out it was a fair coin, you'd be like, "Holy crap, it's a fair coin! What do you know?" So it seems like the same thing could happen with respect to
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know how often it will happen?
very rarely.
Maybe one over a number with 301 digits in it.
Yeah,
So I mean, there are only 80 digits in the number of atoms in the universe, right? So if you turned each atom into someone flipping a coin 1,000 times, it'd be nowhere near it being probable that
right.
it get 1,000 straight heads.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I like I like the flavor of the argument. Okay. So let's get back to my intuition in this kind of case is that this is a reductio absurdum of of the very idea of personal identity in the sense that you mean it. So rather than inferring from this that the easy game is being played, I would infer from this that there just is no such thing as being self. So I wonder why.
Uh-huh.
So I think of myself as kind of an eliminativist about self. So I don't think they're real things. And I think that for mostly the kinds of things that you are talking about. So I wonder why. What would make me go the other way, or what makes
Okay.
you go the other way, instead of this kind of nihilism.
All right. Your view, I mean, what you're making me think of is what I have to say about a Buddhistic view,
Right.
right? Because, I mean, you're not going to deny, are you, that there's at least momentarily the you that is subject of pain or whatever. There's at least that
I
much.
would.
At least that much exists, right?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think the
so
self is a fictional entity created by the brain to make
I'm not
self.
talking about a self.
Okay.
Remember, my thing is there in Hume's metaphysics,
Right.
right? So I'm not talking about a self. Uh, I'm talking about there being pains that are yours.
Uh huh.
Okay. And um, that there are such things, right, depends on the conditions that define things as being yours having come about.
Right.
Right. Now, on the standard Buddhistic view, the moment, which is all that I am, that I can't move beyond, that moment is part of the existence of something like the things we're talking about produced through sperm cell lotteries.
Right.
Right? So if there wasn't that thing, this just, you know, being in pain where it's me in pain would never have occurred. Right. So maybe you don't think that. I mean, maybe you want to rethink what, being in pain is when it's
Yeah.
yours.
Well, I would say there is no such thing as my pain
Oh, okay. Well,
because of the reasons you gave, namely that there's a contradiction in the view. There's an absurd result in the view of thinking that there is. So if you really took your argument
wait, what's
seriously,
the
universalism, the idea that there's only
Why do you think universalism is absurd?
oh well because it just seems intuitively the case that I'm not you. And it doesn't seem to be making the same mistake as the planet with the one red book, and they confuse the redness with, or the book with that copy, or the redness with that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
instantiation, which is a way you try to diffuse this idea. But it just seems like, there's a strong intuitive case to be made that if there's a me,
No,
it's here.
yeah, not,
And then you go through I'm kind of a Parfetian in this way. You go through all of these thought experiments, and then the result is, gee, we must have been wrong at the beginning because look at the mess we're in. It can't really make sense of like
okay.
the results.
Okay, I don't see the mess because I'm not. What I'm talking about is not some kind of mystical one thing that's there and all the experience.
Right.
I'm just talking about the quality of experience as first person. I mean, do you believe that quality exists in
Um,
some experience somewhere or other, that there is first person,
I
you know,
would until I start thinking through these thought experiments. Yeah. I think that's
yeah, okay.
an
So
intuitive
that's
place to
all you
start.
need. That's all you need for you to be all of the things, right? Uh,
Right.
I know that the thing that's me, where again I'm not at all fussy about what the thing is.
Right.
It's the being me that I'm interested in.
Right.
Right? I know that the thing that's me exists. Okay, and I I want to think, what are the probable conditions on this thing I know to be, part of reality? What are the probable conditions on that thing to make it what it is? And they're not going to be conditions that make it just unbelievably improbable that I find what I find,
Right.
that there is the me, right?
But see,
And
if they
the
start with
only
the
condition, and the condition I'm talking about, not a mystical condition. It's not,
no, I
it's
agree with
something
that.
everyone
Yeah.
will agree is there.
Well, I don't know if everyone will agree it's there, but many people I
Well,
agree with. I think I
yeah,
was going to ask you towards the end about illusionism and whether that has anything to do with this with respect to. So I do want to
yeah.
eventually. I'm not an illusionist, as far as I know, but this kind of stuff would tend to force you to that conclusion. I would think, because it does seem like you start with the assumption that there is a self, that there is a me, and what I'm asking is, well, so your modus ponens, it would be my modus tollens. It sort of seems like the result of all this stuff is that that assumption is wrong. There is no me in the sense. There
Yeah,
isn't anything that's mine when you get down to
but
it, because once you start chopping it up and actually looking at the conditions, it's kind of evaporates.
so you see, you're saying there are no pains, no visual experiences, and so on that are particularly mine.
Yes.
Um, that not even what in this moment I'm experiencing as mine. That now you're not saying the experience doesn't exist,
Yeah.
are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. You're saying it isn't mine, but mine, it's minimal what it means for it to be mine here. It's not, I'm not talking about constructing something to be having it that's going to be me or,
Hmm.
uh, um,
You're saying that there's the
I,
immediacy of the experience, and that's what it is to me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
that
saying,
exists.
right,
But that exists all through experience, right? I,
right,
I think of there being a special existence of just this, right? But this turns out to be true of all experience because just a subjective quality. It's not an objective um, characteristic of anything,
hmm,
right? It seems as though there's only one moment in all of experience, in the whole of reality, that is this moment, right? It's a big special. It's now. It's here. It's mine, right?
right. Uh-huh.
But um,
And those couldn't be
this is
illusions.
just true of all the moments equally. It's only a subjective quality. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So let me try a
And
parody on
yeah,
you. So what if someone said it's like
yeah,
you're saying what does it mean to be my money? Well, my money is the money I can access. It's the money that I can spend. And actually, that's true for everybody. So your money is my money.
Huh?
Well, it's the same logic. What makes money mine is that I can access it. But that's the same for you too. What makes your money yours
Wait,
is
sorry, are you mixing this with universalism, or are you keeping us in the usual view of
I'm saying
who
that
I
this
am?
is a kind of
I mean, because
parody.
it is true that if universalism is right, then all owned money is mine. But
Uh-huh.
that's not what you're saying, is it?
Well, I was trying to suggest that this is like a parody of the argument for the
Well, no, I
conditions.
mean, if you're stepping outside of universalism and trying
Yeah.
to construct a parody, right, then it'd just be obvious that uh, within the usual view, when you say something is mine, you mean it attaches to the thing with these particular objective conditions defining it, right?
Mhm.
And they are distinct from each other. So it couldn't be that it all is mine, not
Okay.
within the usual view.
What are the
So I
conditions
don't
that make
see
it
I don't see
distinct?
how your parody works.
What are the conditions which we are attaching to it, which would rule it out?
Conditions attaching to what? Sorry.
Ownership of money.
Oh, I don't know what they are exactly, but there are there are conditions of that, and then
Well, but what's wrong
but
with
they
my
would apply
condition?
if we're not universalists. Okay, they apply to distinct individual persons,
Uh-huh.
and so the fact that all of them have what they would call my money on it wouldn't at all imply that one can reach over to the other one and take what's over there.
Well, no one said that.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm not clear what the parity is. That's my
just that there's some sense in which it's my money.
no, not if you aren't a universalist.
But why not? Given that the conditions for being my money are that I can access it,
Yeah, but
and so
what
that's
you
true
are
everywhere.
not being sorry, not being a universalist. What you are is this specific person located in a particular place with access to a particular pile of money in some place.
Mhm.
Uh, what others are, they're distinct, and the money is distinct, and they have access to that money, but they don't have access to yours. So I'm not seeing how.
Okay, but
Well, I
but
mean, maybe you don't want me to end up showing you that you do have access to all money,
yeah,
or maybe you do. I don't.
no, I don't. What I want
Oh,
to do actually is get you to say what you just said, and then ask, well, why isn't that also a good answer in the case of personal identity? That what
yeah,
I
because
am is the what?
then it would be immensely improbable I existed.
Yeah, but that's the only. So one thing you could say is that what I am is the immediate accessor of these experiences. I'm the one who can access them.
Wait, this is outside of universalism.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
So that what I
Yeah,
am is the one who
sure.
can access this
Yeah,
group of experiences.
yeah,
You can
that's what they
access a
say.
different group of experiences. So we are not the same.
That's right. So you're stating what the usual view is.
Right. But the only
And the
objection that
usual view involves you having won a lot of sperm cell lotteries, among other things. It's incoherent to many. You would agree with me that it's incoherent.
yeah, but I don't see why it's well, I my own view is that maybe it's incoherent, but I don't see why someone would be forced to that conclusion if they simply said, yeah, it's improbable that I exist. And gee, I don't know if I hadn't existed, someone else would, and their existence would be improbable too. So I don't really see why, like, if you're looking for identity conditions for the self, then you gave them as immediate access. Um, and what's clearly different between you and me, it would seem, is that which things we can access, kind of like the money. I have my money that I can access, you have your
Yeah.
money that you can access. And so that's what makes it distinct is the access conditions.
Yeah, okay, that's
Okay.
what the true view is. But
Right.
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Um, yeah, I guess I lost it. What I'm trying to ask you is the only objection to that it's improbable?
No, I have other arguments as well. The
Uh,
book is full of considerations against it.
okay. Well, I guess we've only been focusing on the improbability stuff, which I
Yeah,
think that.
yeah, I think that that's good enough. That's my view. I
Mhm.
mean, when you're saying, oh yeah, it's improbable. Yeah, it's improbable as a fair coin landing heads 1,000 times in a row. I mean, that's some improbable that you got there. I mean, it's not, the everyday sort of minimal improbability of thinking about
I mean, I'm not
synchronous event.
sure. I guess, yeah, I don't understand what's going on here. So it seems
Okay.
like if you flip the coin a bunch of times, some series is gonna emerge. So
Yes,
if you
that's right.
flipped a fair coin 1,000 times, some series of heads and tails is going to emerge,
That's right.
and any one that does is going to be improbable.
Oh, so you think in the awakening game, let's go back to the awakening game, right?
Yeah,
You think even in the easy version, where you flip the coin, there's no list, there's no
right.
coincidence involved to wake you up, right? You think even there it was improbable because every time you flip a coin, it's so improbable. So that's just as good as demanding that the coin land just as in that list that is attached to you. Not
That
true. Not true. Um, um, and I discuss this ad nauseum in the book
yes, that's why I'm getting you
where
to
I
talk
talk
about it.
about what improbability actually consists in.
Uh-huh.
And it consists in coincidence between two independent descriptions of things.
So
So,
why is that not happening in the easy game?
because in the easy game, we're just talking about the imaginary awakening game, right?
Right. Yes.
In the easy game, uh, there's been no assignment of a list to the sleeper um, that the fair coin has to match in
Right.
every single flip of 1,000 flips, right?
Uh-huh.
There's nothing improbable going on, and it's assured that the sleeper is going to wake up no matter how the coin lands, right?
So, but isn't there some sense in which, like in some platonic way, there is an improbability here, given that we can sort of
Yeah,
list out all of the possible
yeah,
ways that this could happen, and the one that
yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
appears is
Yeah,
one of
sure.
those, and that's just as improbable
Yeah,
as it being the
okay.
other one.
And this is something again. I discuss this at pretty great length in
Hmm.
the book. This confuses people no end, right?
Yes.
But I don't think it should.
Okay.
Um, okay, I think when we say that it's improbable that any sequence, think of the usual sort of sequence you'd expect when you flip a fair coin 1,000 times, right? Um, uh, when we say that any one of those sequences would be equally improbable, right? And just as improbable as all heads, by the way,
Exactly.
then what we're thinking of is if you designate that sequence independent of the flipping, and then the flipping matches it, that's your improbable coincidence. But if all you're doing is reading off how a fair coin is landing when it's being flipped, nothing has created a coincidence and therein improbability. So for that person to awaken in the easy game, right, involves no improbability. That sequence of heads and tails they can shrug their shoulders about, right? Um, and so in universalism, you can shrug your shoulders about which sperm cells make it the egg in each of the begettings,
Hmm.
right? That no longer, I mean, yeah, someone could still say, yeah, but it's immensely improbable they any of the sperm cells made it and all that. Yeah, that's if you independently designated that particular sequence of things. But if it's just developing however it develops, there's no improbability that you can make any inference based on.
Mhm.
It always has to be of this sort.
Because you think probability and improbability are subjective as
No,
opposed to objective.
no. Very importantly, I argue that probability is perspectival.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's what I
Yeah,
meant.
yeah,
Sorry,
that's
sorry.
right.
That's what I meant.
But it's objective.
But it's not. Yes, I used the wrong
Yeah,
word. But it's
yeah.
But this
Like,
is the.
if I say I'm 5 miles from Charing Cross, that'll only be true if I'm at that particular place.
Mhm.
But it's not subjective. It's,
Right. It's
objectively true.
perspectival. Right.
Yeah.
So
And
this
if
is the
you've
your
got,
view that probability is perspectival.
yeah, yeah. Like I give this example where that I've done with an audience, right? Where I hand out cards from one deck, and then I randomly pick a card from another deck. The person whose card I match in the audience, that's something improbable has happened for that person.
Mhm.
But for the other people, it was 51 and 52 that they wouldn't be matching what I drew out of the deck. So nothing improbable occurred for them. And if someone
Mhm.
just walked in and watched it, nothing improbable at all has occurred for that person.
If someone walked in and wondered why George picked the ace of spades and Sally picked the two of hearts, as opposed to any of the other two cards,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then that would sort of seem improbable.
That no.
Why
If
not?
sorry. If he had independently announced this kind of prediction of what they had and it matched them,
Mhm.
that'd be improbable. But if he looked at their cards and he just read off what they had, nothing probable has occurred.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand why, because
Yeah,
it still seems due to luck, randomness, or chance that George got the ace and Sally got the two of hearts. They
yeah, it
could
is
have
chance.
equally picked the other
Yeah,
one.
it is
So
chance.
why
But
isn't it a coincidence that it came out that way as opposed to a different way?
what is it coinciding with?
What is
It
it?
would coincide if you're thinking of an independently, listed description of all the cards in the deck. It would coincide with one of those. But that nothing improbable. It's bound to be corresponding to one of those, right? But if you had designated only one of those, independently of it being
Yeah.
withdrawn,
It just I
then
don't
it would be an improbable coincidence that those two matched each other.
I guess I just don't understand what's driving the argument here, because it does seem like there's a sense in which you could you could say, okay, look, there's 20 people in the audience. Each one of them could draw any card. So you could have drawn any of these cards. You could have drawn any of these cards.
Yeah,
Now, which two did you actually draw? Okay. So what explains that? Is that why not? Why didn't it come out the opposite way, or why didn't you draw a different card? It still seems just
just
as
chance. Yeah,
improbable.
just chance. That's true.
So it's just equally. So it seems
Yeah, but
improbable that.
nothing improbable has occurred. And certainly nothing that would be a basis of an inference. You know what? We could be
Hmm,
talking about the hotel inference,
okay.
because that would also have more direct bearing on personal identity.
All right. Let's talk about the hotel inference then.
Yeah. Okay. So say that there's a hotel with countless rooms. In each, there's someone sleeping, and there are two awakening games that might be played. Uh, in the easy game, everyone's just awakened. In the hard game, only one of these countless sleepers is awakened. Right. So you find yourself awake in the room knowing these conditions.
Mhm.
You should infer that it's immensely more probable that the easy game was played, because the only way you would be awake otherwise would be if you were, if chance happened to land on you, right? So now let's think of two external observers. One is allowed to choose randomly one of the rooms, and then it's reported to that person that, yeah, the person in that room woke up. That external observer would be able to make the same inference as the person within the game could, because for both of them, being that person was designated into, it's a random sample among all the sleepers. And if it's just going to be one awakener, it shouldn't turn out that it's an awakener, right? That's what's going on. It all has to do with what's random and what
Right.
isn't. Now, another external observer is guaranteed to to have reported a winner, whichever game is played. So it'll be some, one of the many winners if it's an easy game, or the one if it's a hard game. That person can do nothing with that information at all, right? Because that person doesn't have a random sample among the sleepers.
Right.
Right. Now, in the inference of universalism, I cannot use someone else's existence to infer that universalism is more probable, because I'm going to be presented with whoever won the sperm cell lotteries in those cases, right? But I am the great exception here, right? That I am a random sample among potential people. And I shouldn't turn out to be a winner if what's going on is the hard game, the usual view. Whereas, yeah, I'm a winner, no sweat, if universalism is true.
So let me just ask to make sure, see whether I got this or not. Let's modify the hotel game a bit and introduce a Schrodinger's hotel game. So let's say that there are these countless rooms with sleeping, each room containing a sleeping person, and there is a unobserved radioactive isotope in a box, which if it decays, will wake up one of those sleepers. And if it doesn't decay, wakes up every one of the sleepers. Okay, so it's just a quantum process.
Oh, sorry. Where is this box? This box is
It's,
external to the sleepers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, so in other words, whether the thing decays is what's deciding between whether the hard game and the easy game is played.
Exactly. Instead of the coin flip. Okay, so it's just a quantum Schrodinger's cat kind of situation. It decays or it doesn't, and then it's a hard game or easy game. Okay. So then I awake, and I'm told this. I don't have any reason to infer whether the easy game or the hard game is being played, do I?
Why?
Why? Because it's
if it was a hard, maybe I'm not understanding enough about the decay that's occurring. But are you? I mean, if what you're trying to say is that it might be that prior probabilities are severely against the hypothesis that makes the evidence more probable.
Right? No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a quantum stochastic process with a 50-50 chance of decaying or not decaying.
No, I see. That doesn't sound any different from a coin being flipped to me.
Yeah, that's okay. So, but if I were told that, I would think I have no reason to infer which game was being played. I mean, it decayed one way or the other. That I could tell you, but how do I know?
Sorry, for you to have been awakened in the hard game,
right?
Maybe I'm not understanding this.
No, you're understanding, I think.
Oh, I am. Well, then it would have been immensely improbable that you had been awakened in the hard game, whereas you would for sure have been awakened in the easy game. You wake up, that's your evidence, And between the two hypotheses, it's like the double-headed coin. You,
But it's not, though. It can't be, because it's just a process in nature that it either will be or won't be.
no, but this is like a tossing of, I mean, what you've told me about this decay, right, makes it 50-50, you said.
Exactly.
So this is not any different from them flipping a fair coin to decide which game is being played.
Right, except that it's not being done a bunch of times. It's just, I mean, you could add a bunch of decays, I guess.
No, we're not
Decay
doing it a lot of times, right? The one, if it's a hard game, everyone else is going to sleep forever.
Right.
Okay, we're not doing it a lot of times over.
Right. No, I meant the coin. Like, if you say it has to match a bunch of flips, it has to come up heads, tails, 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 heads, heads, tails, or whatever. Some pattern.
Sorry. That's
Yeah,
a
that's
different.
what I
Yeah.
meant. Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's not
All
like
right.
that. So it's just one
All right.
event.
Okay.
Um,
Look,
but
we
but
can.
but okay, hold on. So if it's just one event, the thing either decays or it doesn't. There's an objective 50% probability that it does or doesn't. It's random. There's nothing that determines which way it's gonna outcome. Then I
Yeah.
awaken and I'm told all of this. I'm gonna think, how the hell do I know? It decayed one way or the other. So either it was
Of
like,
course, if your opinion was just about whether the thing decayed or not, you'd have no basis for saying one or the other. You'd say 50-50,
right.
right?
No, which game is being played?
You've got another datum here. You got that you woke up, and you know that that datum would have been immensely improbable on one hypothesis, the hard game, and inevitable on the other hypothesis.
Exactly. But how could that give me a
How could
reason?
you not think it's more probable that it was the game that woke everyone up?
Um,
I don't
because
see what
that
the.
can't affect the decay of
I'm
the
not saying it does
element.
affect the decay.
Well, then that's the only way that I could know what
No,
happened.
no. I mean, it's not as though I'm saying there's some weird causal thing reaching backwards and affecting the decay. No.
Well, then that's the only way I
What
could
I'm
know
saying is,
what truly happened.
that the intervening thing. There are three things happening here.
Right.
One is whether the thing decays. One is which game is being played.
Right.
I'm calling it the intervening thing.
Okay.
The other is he woke up.
Right.
Okay. And you're not directly judging whether the thing decayed or not. Or if they flipped a coin, if they flipped a fair coin. You're not directly judging that, of course. It's because that intervening thing resulted in you waking up instead of sleeping forever, that you were entitled to infer that the thing happened that made it the case that they played the easy game.
Yeah.
You're not reasoning directly about the thing that determined which game happened anymore with a flipping of a coin.
Right. So then I have no basis. I have no, yeah. So I may think it's reasonable. I would expect, let's put it this way. I would expect that let's say that if it decayed, only I woke up. If it didn't decay, everybody woke up. So if I was told that, I would expect, yeah, it probably didn't decay. But that can't be knowledge of what actually happened. It can only give me like a reasonable expectation.
Look, it depends on how tied together the events were. If you have every single confidence that they determined that they would whether they would wake everyone up or just one
Mhm.
by that what happened with that particle, then you could have that degree of confidence because what you can have total confidence about is that they woke up everyone instead of just one at random, one randomly, because the result was you waking up, and it would something very improbable would have to have occurred for you to have awakened.
But
If it
it's
was a
not
hard being
improbable
played.
because it's just 50-50.
No, It's not.
There's no
It's not.
coincidence here, so that's why I'm trying to devise the situation so that we get
There
around this
would be
whole.
an immense coincidence
What coincidence? There's no.
between you and the one they awakened.
That's
There's
not a
no coincidence
coincidence.
if they wake everyone up.
It's
No.
only if somebody, like you said, priorly asserts, I bet it's that guy who's going to wake up. That would be make it coincidental. No one pointed at me beforehand and said it's going to be that guy who wakes up. So where's the coincidence?
Well, sorry. Say that again. Sorry.
Well,
Just
of
trying.
course, as I understand your view, what would make it improbable is if someone stipulated beforehand that it was specifically that guy in room N560 or whatever who woke up. But no one did that. No
I
one,
don't get you. I don't get you. What guy are you talking about now?
some,
Someone other
well,
than you?
someone outside of the hotel who's trying to guess which room is going to
No,
contain the
we're
awakened
not. We're
person.
not talking about that.
Exactly. So there's no coincidence.
What?
That's what would be required
Well,
on your view for there to be a
no, no, no.
coincidence.
For you, there'd be the immense coincidence that the one person they woke up was you.
Why? Who stipulated that beforehand? That's what you
Stipulated
said.
what?
That's
We've stipulated that we're either waking everybody up, in which case you're bound to wake up,
right.
or only waking up one. Or in a variation of this, we could have the coin flipped 1,000 times for each one, and have
Right.
it, the original hard game I described being played for each one. Or the easy game, everyone's awakened no matter which way any coins land.
Right.
So that's what we're using to judge this thing. I cannot, for the life of me, see why you're introducing this particle as making some kind of difference to it.
Um, because there's nothing improbable about the particle decaying or not decaying. It's equally probable that it does either.
Yeah, same with the flip. If you got a proper flip,
Exactly.
the same is true. So
And that's going
why
to either
introduce?
wake one
Yeah,
person up or wake everybody up.
yeah,
So there's nothing improbable there either. It's 50-50 that it's going to wake one person up or wake everybody up.
that's true.
So then I wake up and I'm told all this and I
Yeah,
think to myself, so did something improbable happen or not? The answer
yeah.
has to be
And
no because it's 50-50. It's not
no, it's
improbable.
no, it's no because it's no because it's immensely more probable that the easy game was played.
It can't be. It's impossible that it's immensely more probable that the easy game was played if it's 50-50 that the thing decays.
You're really no. We're not. We're talking about conditional probability here. We're not talking about the initial probability of the whole event. Of course, we're talking about conditional probability, where you
But
take
I'm
something.
rejecting that. I don't accept this Bayesian
You
stuff. I
you
don't think
don't
that this
accept.
works.
You don't accept conditional probability.
Not as a reason for thinking
Okay,
that certain
let's
things are
let's
true.
let's
No.
let's
As a
have
reason,
a look at.
look, evidence is one thing, truth is another. You can have evidence for
Sorry,
something and it
sorry,
doesn't have to be
sorry.
true. So
Look,
conditional probability has to do with
okay.
evidence.
Let me describe a case to you that I think we already agreed on, but it looks as though maybe we didn't.
Okay.
But I'll just complicate it slightly. Okay. So let's say a fair coin is tossed. If it lands heads, they're going to flip the double-headed coin 1,000 times.
Okay.
If it lands tails, they're going to flip a fair coin 1,000 times.
Okay.
Okay, so which they're doing is decided by this 50-50 one fair coin flip. Got it?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Now, we know it's reported to us, we observed it, we trust the people at the time. All 1,000 times, whichever coin they used, it landed heads. Now, I'm saying that a rational person has to think that, yes, it could have been the fair coin, but then something immensely improbable, given the hypothesis of the fair coin, would have to have happened within that hypothesis,
Yes.
right?
And I agree.
Whereas if it's the double-headed coin, there's no improbability. And so I would very confidently say that the initial fair coin toss, right, or decaying of something or whatever it is, had decided on it being the double-headed coin. Not because I know about the initial coin toss. I've got no reason to say anything about that. I know that it is tied to this, this intermediary thing, and that the intermediary thing has to have been the double-headed coin, because it's just so improbable that it was the fair coin.
Yeah, and that's what I'm disagreeing with. I know.
You disagree with that?
Well, I don't think you have you. I think that you would have some evidence, and that it would be reasonable for you to say probably it was resulted in flipping the
Sure would
double-headed
be.
coin, but it wouldn't give you reason to think that it were true without checking the coins. So you can't
You'd have
know
no
what
reason. You'd
actually
have no
is.
reason.
You do have some reason, namely that it was 50-50. The initial coin
I would
toss.
say, even if you didn't have the initial stipulations of what's going on, right? And a coin was tossed 1,000 times and landed heads every time, I think you'd know it's rigged.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, right.
No, I
Well,
just think
then,
that's a wrong
and
view
you're
about probability.
okay.
So if you're a frequentist,
Okay,
you need to flip it another 1,000 times. And in fact, maybe another 1,000 times. And in fact, the idea is just that it will
yeah.
approximate 50-50 over a large enough sample, not that every sample must have 50-50.
But you
So
think 1,000 straight heads doesn't mean it's more probable it was rigged to land heads
I
in one
don't.
way or another.
I think that I would start to suspect it, but it doesn't prove it.
When would you start? How many heads would you start suspecting?
Um,
It's
well, suspect is
301
one thing.
digits long. The number,
Yeah, and the world's a weird place. I mean,
against,
improbable things happen. So the fact that they're improbable
whoa,
can't rule them out.
I see.
I mean, I just disagree, but that's why I've been talking about this probability stuff
Okay,
this whole time. I just,
okay, okay. All right. Then I see we've got a really fundamental difference here.
yeah, deeper
That
than personal identity.
it's deeper than anything I've ever heard of before.
Okay,
We're probably different species altogether. I don't know.
it's true. I'm semi-rational. You're fully rational.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. No, sorry, I don't
No,
want to.
I
But,
agree.
but
But
that's
the
how
point, I'm
that's
an
true.
empiricist, so I don't think you can know how the world is without looking at it.
Okay,
So
look.
you can't ever tell which coin was flipped without checking the coin.
Okay,
You could have
in
reasons to
part,
suspect, you could come to sort of
yeah,
reasonably believe, but that's not the same
right.
thing as it being
In
true.
part two of the book, I describe empirical thought,
Hmm.
what I think is behind empirical thought, and I do think it's probability.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, but I mean,
And
and it may,
so it seems to me, if I were being uncharitable, I would say you're confusing evidence with truth. So we can have evidence for things which can make me have reason to believe them, but that's not the same thing as it being
I'm
true.
not confusing them.
But it seems like you
I'm
are,
not
since
I'm
you're
not
taking in
saying,
probability to mean that it's false and probability to
yeah,
mean that it's true.
but I'm not confusing the evidence of the coin having landed 1,000 heads with the truth of it being a double-headed coin. I'm not doing that.
It seems like you are.
I'm no, I'm not saying, oh, there's the truth. We don't even have to go any further. You say it's a no. I'm saying that this is the most extraordinarily strong evidence you'll ever have for anything, that one particular thing is true here, which is that it's the double-headed coin. But I don't confuse the evidence with the hypothesis.
Yeah, I said if I was being uncharitable, not that I'm trying to be
Okay, don't
charitable,
be.
but but it does seem to me that there's this issue here, which is that when I awaken in the awakening game, and you ask me which game is being played, I would
Yeah,
say, well, I suspect that the easy game is being played But if you told me, nope, actually it's the hard game, I'd be like, oh, well, gee, look at that. Improbable thing happened.
Okay,
Weird. So
okay.
what?
I don't know if I've ever come across this before, but
Well, I
okay.
mean, it's a standard kind of physicist response to the fine tuning problem, which is just that, yeah, improbable things happen. Their
Oh,
being
yeah,
improbable is
yeah.
not a
Okay,
reason to
okay.
rule it out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
Okay.
we we disagree.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that then I guess it's clear that you require this for the argument to go through.
I don't know how. See,
Because to me, they all seem
I
equally
haven't
probable, like at
gauged.
each
I
stage of the
haven't gauged
argument.
completely. I mean, if you really do shrug your shoulders between it being a fair coin or a double-headed coin, after the evidence of it landing heads a
Mhm.
thousand times, if you really do, right, then yeah, maybe you won't be impressed by my probability argument.
Mhm.
But and maybe I've come across other people who would say that, but I've never explored it enough. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
every time
I mean,
I mean,
fair enough.
this is decades old. Every time I've talked about it, everyone could agree on an example like the double-headed coin.
Well, I
You know, how
agree that
about
it would
this
be
one?
reasonable to conclude. I disagree that that would
How
give
about
me
this? How
that
about
proves that
this?
it's true.
People like this case, right? That I use sometimes. There are two boxes. Let's say each box has hundreds of coins in it.
Mhm.
One box has all fair coins. The other box has all double-headed coins. Now, one box, and you don't have any reason to think it's one rather than the other, which description. One box is tipped out on the floor. You look down, all of them heads on the top.
Mhm.
Now, I would think it's immensely more probable that the box that was tipped was the one with the double heads, because it'd be so improbable to have this result if the fair coins were tipped. But you say you don't altogether leave that behind, but you say, well, you know, maybe I'm a bit inclined towards if it's the box with double-headed coins, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was the fair coins.
Exactly.
That's your view. Okay.
I would go and check. I wouldn't just go, oh, okay.
I see.
So it seems to me that in both cases, they're kind of improbable. And the specific hotel inference we were talking about, my awakening, isn't very improbable. Someone has to awaken. Why not me? So what? I'm not sure
Oh,
what would make.
that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
but
sure what would make it improbable
of
in that
course
case
someone
at all.
has yeah, of course
Yeah,
someone has to awaken. Well,
right.
I mean, you could say
So it's
that with
not
the
improbable.
external observer too. The external observer chooses a room at random,
Mhm.
right, and is told that that the person in that room woke up, right? So he will also would be saying, well, someone has to wake up. Why couldn't it just have been him? And the thing is, it's true, it could have been him, but it's immensely improbable that he was the awakener if it was a hard game that was played, because improbable any particular, and this guy was chosen at random.
Right. So for the external observer, I agree, but it's for me that we're who's the
No, no, no,
awakener
no. You should
that
say the same thing for the external observer.
no.
I don't get that. I don't get the
There's no
difference.
way in which that you should say the same thing because no one has designated me out beforehand, like with the external observer.
Yeah, you are designated for yourself as just one of these people. We're talking about you in the usual view.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Right. So
So,
so I
so
wake
you're,
up and I go, is it just me or is it everybody? And you say, well, we flipped a coin to determine. I go, great. So I guess I don't know.
yeah, okay. So,
Which
but
way did
why
the
don't
coin
you
come
say
out?
that? I don't see why you don't say the same thing for the guy observing externally.
Because
I
he
mean,
picks one
sure,
out of
he
all
picked
those.
one at random. He picked one at random, right?
Yeah.
And I say that your room, the room that was yours, was random relative to somebody waking up. Okay.
Right.
And he picked from outside, he picked one randomly, right? But you could go through the same formula with him. He could say, I mean, because look, I'm an external observer of the 1,000 heads, right? I mean, but you're still not impressed, right?
Well, there's nothing
So, but
weird about
why
George
make an
picking a
exception
certain
for him?
card. I mean, unless you think there's something improbable about that, which you said you don't, then it's the exact same case with me waking up. It's just, you know, uh, the only thing that would make it improbable is if someone stipulated ahead of hand, and then it would be a weird coincidence. There's no coincidence here. I just don't see what reason there is to expect any kind of that there's a coincidence. Um,
Okay. Okay. Well, look, I understand you and I don't understand you.
okay. That's cool.
You know
Know
what I mean?
thyself.
Yeah. Yeah. Know thyself.
Yeah. So anyway, I understand that we have differences here, and we don't need to belabor them. We've already gone down this rabbit hole enough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, uh, it does seem to me that without these specific views about probability and what counts as improbable and what counts as not improbable,
Yeah.
then the argument's not going to convince someone who isn't already accepting those things. So maybe those are the ones you should accept. I'm not sure. I think probability is very confusing. That's why so many people are confused by it.
Yeah. That's why I
So
spend so much time talking about it in the
yeah,
book.
exactly. But so I'm just still confused about what makes these things improbable on your view. And then from the improbability to why I think it's really true, as opposed to just giving me some reason to believe it's true, and those things are distinct. So ultimately, and then finally, just again,
Yeah.
the reverse inference being that there's just no sense to the idea that there's a distinct me, given that if your conclusion was that the easy game, if you were forced to view the easy game as being the one that was being played, then I would say there's no sense in which um, something has been established. That means that I am the same person in the universal case as you. Rather, what you've established is that there just is no self, or there is no subject. But I understand there's many different ways you could go through here. So that's, I think it's interesting. But you have to go through a specific way through the argument to end up with universalism. So it doesn't seem like it's forced on you, even if.
Okay. It's to me, it seems forced.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you
yeah,
accept these things, which I've tried to
I
draw up at
do.
the beginning, which was that the improbable is improbable, whereas I think the improbable is probably just as probable as the improbable. So I'm not sure, and you think that's a priori, but I'm a very deep,
Yeah,
not a fan of the a priori. I'm like I said, an empiricist.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think we have much a priori knowledge, and that what we do think we have can be easily undermined empirically. But I understand that these views, are
okay.
particular to me and
When
maybe not, not shared by you.
I do think it could be useful for someone or other to heard us thrashing this out.
Okay,
I,
cool. That's good. Okay, so then just I know you have a life that you need to get back to, so I'm mindful of the time. However,
yeah,
I am curious because you said that there were other arguments against the usual view. I don't think of myself as having the usual view, by the way, because I don't think there really is any such thing as the self in the sense that we're talking about. But
all right,
I do wonder, like, suppose that you met someone who was an illusionist, someone who said there is no phenomenal consciousness, there is nothing that it's like. So
yeah.
you're going to say, they're going to say, then, okay, right, there's no universalist for them, or could you still be a universalist and take illusion? And I'm thinking of people like Keith Frankish
I
and
mean,
Daniel Dennett specifically.
okay. Well, I'm feeling now that there could be someone thinking practically anything. So I,
It's
I
true.
completely, yeah. I mean, fine. Uh, let them do it.
Okay. So, but if they denied that there was an immediacy of experience,
Yeah, okay. I've got hold of it right now.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm not going to deny. But
But so the illusionist thinks that that's an illusion, that you don't have a hold of it
well,
right now.
whatever it is, I'm not saying what it is.
Mhm.
And it's not part of universalism to say anything about what consciousness is.
Hmm.
Okay, it's only saying if even for the illusionist, right? Okay, you don't think there is any consciousness, so of course you don't think any consciousness has immediacy. But I'm saying if something had immediacy, it'd be mine as
Okay.
consciousness.
What
That's
if
all.
it only seemed to have immediacy? Would it then still be yours?
I think it probably would still count with me. I mean, my what's required for me is really minimal, as in the Hume case. Right?
Okay.
So,
I
yeah,
did.
I think that'd be enough.
On the flip side of this same question, I want to ask you about AI and whether you have views about whether AI can be conscious or if this isn't
Ah,
something you've thought
okay.
about,
All
because
right.
it does seem to imply that if we do have artificial consciousness, that they also
Um,
would be subject to the same argument, right? Part of us.
well, AI loves universalism. Let me say,
Okay.
I love presenting it to them. They
Okay.
all think it's the best.
I see.
But so I have a real soft spot for them. But I I'm a functionalist
Okay.
regarding the mind-body problem,
Mm,
and so I think there could be realized in the kinds of materials where you get AI, uh, really, consciousness.
mm,
But I tend to think it's not there yet.
I see. But you don't have any in
It would
principle
need
objection
something
to it.
more. Yeah, it would need the causal roles being played
Mm,
in a rich enough way in responses.
interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. Myself, I'm more of an identity theorist, flat-footed physicalist. So I think
Right,
that's,
right.
um, but I think there's room, interesting to hear your views on this. Okay. In the chat, we do have one kind of comment, which I was curious about your reaction to.
Yeah, sure.
Pessimistic idealism, a viewer of the channel, a friend of the channel says, the thought experiment that we're talking about seems analogous to Poincare's argument regarding all physical objects shrinking or enlarging overnight. And I guess I was thinking to myself that this isn't really analogous. But yeah, I was just curious if you saw any relation between your
Yeah,
thought experiment and.
let me think for a moment whether that does anything for me. Uh, I can't quite see it. It's
Okay.
tempting to.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think what they were referring to maybe at the point where we're switching brains sections by section.
oh,
Earlier in our discussion, maybe that's what they were referring to was the idea that things could change drastically without you noticing. That's the way I'm seeing them connected
oh,
to
I see.
that.
Yeah, but
I
that
could
was
see.
only one part of my
Yeah,
thought experiment. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. All right, Arnold, I really appreciate your taking the time to have this conversation with me. I do always like to ask as my final question if
yeah.
there was anything which didn't come up, which you thought should have come up, or that you would like
Uh,
to briefly mention here at the end. The answer can be no, but I always like to check.
uh, yeah, I would have liked to talk about other things, but um, I'm pretty satisfied. I mean, I think it took a strange direction for a lot of the end of
Okay.
it, but okay,
It happens.
yeah, and maybe it was useful for some people watching it to
Okay.
see that play out. I hope so.
All right. Excellent. On that note, I want to thank you again for joining me. As usual, it's great to talk
Thank
with
you.
you. And if you
Yeah.
just hang out for a second, then I'll say bye.